Human resources people. What are NSFW reasons an employee has been terminated for? Story 1. Guy got fired for using his work laptop to book escorts while traveling for business. Not just casual bookings either, he had a whole system going. After IT flagged some weird traffic, they dug deeper and found a spreadsheet on his desktop. This thing had scores, rankings, reviews, like full-on Yelp for sex workers. The worst part? He had a column for which female co-workers each escort resembled. Like, this one looks like marketing Sarah, or kinda like Becky from accounting but with better legs. HR lost their minds. Dude was out the door that same day. There was a whole meeting about how not to sexualize co-workers, and IT added new flagging protocols after that. Legend says the spreadsheet was titled Field Research. Story 2. We had a guy caught smoking substances by the cooling tower. Not just smoking, he was fully leaned back, enjoying himself like it was his front porch. When we confronted him, he acted surprised like, "Oh, is this not allowed?" But wait, there's more. Another guy was caught mid-session in his car with his side piece. We'd called him on the radio multiple times, and he didn't answer. When security finally found him, windows were fogged up, and it was like a damn sauna in there. He didn't even try to deny it. And just last week, 2 linemen got canned for stealing about $60,000 worth of copper wiring from the company truck. Sold it off, thought no one would notice. Joke's on them, GPS showed exactly where they lost it. Story 3. So this guy gets hired, and within 6 months, he's gone. Why? He kept showing adult films to his coworkers. Like, not just mentioning them, he'd literally pull them up on his computer and go, "You gotta see this scene." People were uncomfortable, obviously. Then one day, his manager walks in and finds him mid-substance use in the break area. Instead of hiding it or apologizing, he goes, "Hey, can you watch the door for me?" Like it was a normal favor. Manager noped right out, called HR, and the guy was walked out that same day. I heard he tried to file for wrongful termination. Didn't work out for him. Story 4. Back when I was a warehouse manager, I busted 2 employees getting it on in an isolated high bay storage aisle. They didn't even try to hide it. I just looked at them, sighed, and walked off. Not my circus. But the real kicker? I caught a member of upper management stealing product from the same area. He had a duffel bag full of stuff. Again, I didn't say a word. Later that week, I got promoted. To this day, I wonder if I got bumped up because I kept my mouth shut or because I didn't make a scene. Either way, best decision I ever made. Story 5. Not HR, but my buddy in IT security had a doozy. This was in the late 90s at a big company. There was this one team in the basement. Nobody really knew what they did. Their cubicles were set up in a way so they could see if anyone was coming. They requisitioned a pricey server for work. 6 months in, that server was nearly full. An audit showed that this 5-person team was using 70% of the entire company's email storage. Turns out they were emailing and storing adult films, lots of them. Pictures, videos, you name it. IT locked down their machines and fired all of them. My buddy had to go through all the files and catalog it for legal. Took him a week. He said it was the most disturbing thing he ever had to do. They gave him 2 weeks off and offered therapy. He vented to me over burgers and beer. Said he never looked at email the same again. Story 6. Back when I worked at a UK job center, we had 3 people, 2 guys and a woman, come in to file for unemployment after being sacked from the same factory. All claimed unfair dismissal. But then, one of the guys' wives barges in yelling, demanding to know why that idiot who lost my Trevor his job was allowed to collect benefits. That's how we learned the 3 had been caught mid-threesome in the factory toilets. On the clock. Gross misconduct, obviously. The woman's husband didn't know until then. She screamed, cried, and stormed out. The blokes just stood there red-faced. You'd think they'd be embarrassed, but one of them actually asked if it still counted as a dismissal if it was technically consensual. Yeah, mate, it still counts. Story 7. Guy got caught pleasuring himself in the parking lot. First week on the job. No attempt to hide it. Just sitting in his car with his phone out, going to town. Company was super lawsuit averse, so they rarely fired anyone. We once had a guy who clocked in, left for the whole shift, then came back just to clock out, and they still didn't fire him without a warning. But this guy, HR said jerking it in the parking lot was a fireable offense. So I volunteered to handle the termination. Called him into an office and said, "We're letting you go." He looked shocked and said, "Don't I get a warning?" I just said, "Not for this." He got up and walked out without another word. Never saw him again. Story 8. A man came in furious, stormed into zoning management, demanding to speak to someone about one of our employees. Apparently, this employee was sleeping with his wife. Zoning manager said, "Sorry to hear that, but why are you telling me?" The man clarified, "Because they're doing it at work." Turns out, the employee worked in animal control and had arranged to work weekends. The guy's wife would dress like she was going shopping and head over to the office, where they'd hook up, sometimes between euthanizing animals. Investigation found emails between them on the work computer. She told him his junk was smaller than her husband's, but she liked it anyway. They had sex on a swivel chair, among other places. Employee was fired, but the chair stayed. It's probably still there. Story 9. Found a used condom in my office trash. Thought it was a one-off. Then another showed up a few days later. I notified security, who added my office to their patrol route. Turns out, one of my employees, a married woman, was sneaking guys in from other departments after hours. She had a key from the previous office occupant and used it for her little escapades. When confronted, she admitted to 3 different guys. All were fired. A cleaning crew was brought in to deep clean the office, but I still felt gross being in there. Every time I sat down, I wondered which corner had been used. 0 stars. Do not recommend. Story 10. I live near a Honda plant. One day, a worker started filming the assembly line for some kind of social media post. Then out of nowhere, the guy next to him pulls out his junk and the woman beside him gives him about 3 seconds of oral. On the line. In full view of the camera. Video made it to the internet in less than a day. Both were fired immediately. The company had to hold a meeting reminding everyone not to engage in explicit behavior on the production floor. You'd think that'd be common sense, but guess not. Rumor is they were dating, if you can call that dating. Story 11. Right after the new guy walked out of the bathroom, someone found a bent and burnt spoon in the trash. When we confronted him, he couldn't even string together a full sentence. Just stared at the floor and mumbled. It was painfully obvious he was on something. We had to call security to escort him out, because he got weirdly defensive and started pacing like a caged animal. HR processed the termination immediately. Later, a manager joked that it was the fastest time-to-fire ratio we'd had in months. The bathroom was shut down for cleaning for the rest of the day. Pretty sure the janitor still hasn't forgiven us for that. What's worse, this guy had aced his interview. Came in with a collared shirt, talked about getting his life back on track. Everyone fell for it. But the moment he had a closed door and a toilet stall, he went full relapse. Story 12. We had a whole saga that became known as the Cadbury Caper. No joke. Several employees were sneaking into a storage room that a third-party vendor used to stash chocolate bars. 7 of them were eventually fired for organizing a full-blown candy heist. It started small, 1 or 2 missing bars. Then whole boxes started disappearing. Security installed a camera, and boom, they caught multiple people rotating shifts, grabbing candy like it was a grocery store. But wait, there's more. During the investigation, we uncovered 2 more side scandals. One employee had been taking clean linens, sheets, towels, washcloths, home to his cottage every weekend, using them, then returning the dirty laundry like it was a hotel drop-off. Another? A nurse was having secret hookup sessions with a long-term patient. She'd wheel him into an unused storage room in the basement, lock the door, and they'd do the deed. We only found out because someone caught them mid-action and reported it. Oh, almost forgot. We also had someone smearing feces on the staff bathroom walls for weeks. Literal finger painting. We had to install cameras and clean after every use until we caught them. Working in healthcare is wild sometimes. Story 13. This one executive was told to put together a PowerPoint presentation. Simple task, right? Just take all the slides we sent him over the day and organize them. He had an entire room full of engineers and managers feeding him content. His boss said, "I'll be back at 4 p.m. to see what you've got." So we grind all day, sending him our parts. For rolls around, the boss walks in and says, "Show me." And this guy has nothing. Not one slide. Turns out, he didn't know how to use PowerPoint. Seriously. Said his wife had always done his slides for him at night. Man made it all the way to a managerial role without knowing how to click and drag a text box. He got fired right there in front of all of us. Another exec got canned later that month for stealing autographed sports memorabilia from a client. Yep, signed footballs and jerseys. Security guard compiled footage, made a greatest hits tape, and handed it to the CEO during a VIP tour. CEO watched it in his office, then had the guy escorted out. He lost his job, six-figure salary, and his wife. All for a few signed balls. Story 14. It was Secret Santa season, and one guy, who happened to be the owner of the company, pulled the name of a lesbian co-worker. His gift? A molded sex toy of his own junk. I wish I were joking. It came in a discreet box with a note that said, "One size fits all." The office went absolutely silent when she opened it. Then it erupted, half in laughter, half in stunned horror. She just rolled her eyes and said, "Typical." No one got fired because, again, this guy owned the place. The company culture was, let's say, unfiltered. Lots of swearing, crude jokes, and questionable banter. Somehow that made it okay in their eyes. I don't work there anymore, but I still talk to people who do. Apparently, stuff like that happens all the time. It's their version of team bonding. Honestly, I'm amazed no one's sued them yet. HR is basically just a suggestion box there. The guy who made the gift still brags about it. Says it was the most memorable Secret Santa gift ever. He's not wrong. But maybe don't give someone a replica of your genitals next time. Story 15. I was a manager at an office, and one weekend, one of our staff came in to catch up on paperwork. She ended up walking in on a male co-worker mid-thrust with another woman, who, by the way, was definitely not his wife. They were going at it on his desk like it was some kind of workplace porno. She was so shocked she just stood there for a second. Later, when she told me what happened, she gave the most detailed description I've ever heard in my life. Down to the smell. Yep, she said the office smelled like sex. I had to pretend I wasn't laughing. The guy was fired within the week. His wife found out and filed for divorce shortly after. Moral of the story? Don't be cheap. If you're going to cheat, maybe don't do it in your office where co-workers can walk in at any moment. Also, Febreze can only do so much. We had to air out that room for days. I still avoid that part of the building when I can. Can't unsmell what's been smelled. Story 16. Years ago, I was chatting with our head of training, asked him what the wildest firing he'd ever seen was. Without blinking, he said, "Sex in the stairwell." Apparently, he got a call from the hotel manager where they were hosting a corporate training session. The manager asked, "Are you aware we have security cameras in the stairwells?" Then he showed him the footage. 3 employees, 2 guys, 1 woman, taking turns with each other in the stairwell like it was a damn soap opera. Right in the middle of the day, too. The footage was so graphic, they had to blur it later during internal review. All 3 were fired immediately. They had to fly them back home the next morning, because the hotel wouldn't let them stay another night. The worst part? It wasn't even a particularly nice stairwell. Concrete walls, fluorescent lights. Zero ambience. People will do the dumbest things when they think no one's watching. But someone's always watching, especially in hotels. That was the last time we booked a training event without checking where the cameras were first. Lesson learned the hard way. Story 17. This happened before good web filtering was a thing. HR asked me to check the logs for a reported incident. A guy had come into work early and was walking past the cubicles when he saw another early bird scrolling through his computer. At first glance, it looked like adult content. At second glance, it was worse. Like not your average adult film. It was full-on bestiality. I checked the logs, and sure enough, the URLs were beyond disturbing. We had to involve HR, IT, and legal. The guy was brought in, and his first response was, "Oh, I didn't know that was illegal." Are you kidding me? He was fired immediately. The computer was confiscated and wiped. HR sent out a very carefully worded email about appropriate internet use that didn't even come close to describing what happened. I still can't believe he had the audacity to look surprised when we confronted him. Like, "Sir, you watched horse porn on a work computer. At 7:30 a.m. on a Tuesday. What did you think was going to happen?" Story 18. We had a guy who was clearly on something. Slurred speech, twitchy, always sweating. Boss tried to help him out, gave him a take-home drug test to return later. The guy comes back with a clean sample. Boss is suspicious, says, "If this is your urine, you're pregnant." Dude blows up, saying there's no way. Boss makes him test again, this time in the office bathroom. Unsurprisingly, he fails. Positive for meth. He gets fired on the spot. But guess what? He's back a week later like nothing happened. Said he talked to the union, and they said he had a right to return. I don't know what kind of strings he pulled, but there he was, back at his desk like we hadn't just walked him out 7 days earlier. Even HR looked confused. He didn't last long after that. Within a month, he failed another test and was gone for good. Still, the whole pregnant meth P thing gets brought up every time someone mentions drug testing. It's a classic. Story 19. Back when I worked on a farm, I had to do the occasional hiring and firing. We brought on a seasonal guy to help out at the farm market. Seemed normal enough at first. Friendly, showed up on time. Then one day, a customer's dog goes missing. We start a search and find the dude in the walk-in cooler, with the dog. And not in a wholesome way. I won't go into too much detail, but it was enough to involve the police. The guy was arrested on the spot. The worst part? He acted like he didn't understand what the issue was. Kept saying, "I was just playing with it." No man. That's not playing. That's felony level disturbing. We had to throw out all the produce that was in the cooler. Then we had to bleach it top to bottom. No one wanted to go in there for weeks. I've fired people for being lazy, for stealing, for cussing out customers. But this was a whole new level. I'm still haunted by it. Story 20. Hospitals are wild. I've worked in one long enough to see some stuff. We had this program for high school grads interested in pharmacy careers. One female pharmacist, mid-40s, took a special liking to one of the interns. He was only 16. She straight up seduced him. They got caught having sex in the stairwell. Someone heard the moaning and called security. It turned into a massive scandal. HR, legal, even the local news got wind. She got fired, obviously. He didn't come back either. But that wasn't even the only incident that year. A nurse in his 20s got caught stealing meds. Another was fired for taking insulin home for her diabetic ferret. And a resident got caught banging a nurse in a call room. Loudly. The walls weren't thick and multiple patients complained. It's like working in a soap opera with syringes. The stairwell incident was the worst, though. The hospital had to update all training material and started installing security cameras in more places. Every time I walk by that stairwell, I shake my head. People really have no shame. Story 21. Had to fire a line lead in manufacturing because she was sleeping with both the first and second shift production leaders. Nobody knew for a while until both dudes figured it out and decided to throw down in the middle of the damn plant. Like shouting, pushing, getting in each other's faces with forklifts running in the background. She was standing there all smug, egging them on like they were fighting over a rose on The Bachelorette. HR had to jump in and separate them. We pulled camera footage because, of course, we had to. Sure enough, she'd been sneaking off with both of them during breaks, sometimes even during active shift hours. One guy even left his station for 20 minutes once. She denied everything until the footage came out, then just shrugged and said, "Well, guess I'm done here." All three were gone by the end of the week. Plant morale went up after that. People still joke about it, calling it the love triangle incident. Story 22. Used to work for a big UK-based company. Part of onboarding was a week-long training trip to London, basically dinners, drinks, and pretending we were learning. One guy from my team got absolutely hammered one night. We're all piling into cabs to head to the next spot, and the corporate head of HR is climbing into the one in front of him. Now she's a larger woman, and this guy, in his drunken genius, winds up and delivers a full open palm slap to her arse. Loud as hell. Everyone froze. She turned around, eyes like saucers. He just laughed and said, "Didn't know it was you." Like that made it better. She didn't say a word, just got in the cab and made a phone call. He was gone the next morning. Didn't even make it to the second day of training. We got a company-wide email later that week about respectful conduct during corporate events, but everyone already knew what it was about. Legend says his slap echoed through HR forever. Story 23. Recruiter here. Guy came in all confident, talking about how his current job didn't challenge him, how he was ready for a new frontier. Kept going on about how underappreciated he was, how his co-workers didn't share his vision. Usual ego trip. Turns out he'd just gotten fired for watching adult film at his desk, while drunk, and passed out with his junk in his hand. Cleaners found him the next morning, still half-zipped, computer still playing some real budget-tier adult content. He'd passed out halfway through his session. His company had to call security, HR, and IT. The HR rep who told me the story said they had to wipe his entire machine because he'd downloaded so much stuff. When I asked him why he left his last job, he said irreconcilable differences with management. Yeah, no kidding. I didn't even bother calling him back after that. Dude thought he was slick. Honestly, I still think about the cleaner who had to walk into that. No one's paid enough for that. Story 24. Worked at a hospital. Director of IT had a habit of calling nurses into his office for closed-door meetings. Everyone knew what was going on. It wasn't subtle. These nurses would walk in looking normal and come out 20 minutes later looking disheveled. One even said, "Hoo boy," as she left once. HR started getting anonymous complaints. Then they weren't anonymous. Eventually someone gathered enough testimonials, text messages, hallway whispers, work emails sent at 3 a.m., and they finally walked him out. He didn't even try to deny it. Just said, "Guess it caught up with me." I heard he tried to start fresh at another hospital across town, but word travels fast in healthcare. Last I heard, he was doing IT at a podiatry clinic. Wild how long he got away with it. Some people were shocked. Others said, yeah, about time. Either way, his office door's been removed ever since. No more closed meetings. Just open awkwardness and a new IT guy who won't even look nurses in the eye. Story 25. Teacher got canned for watching adult film during class. Not just on his laptop, he somehow managed to project it onto the classroom screen. Students were sitting there, probably thinking it was some weird history video until the moaning started. He was too busy enjoying the video to notice. When he did, he panicked and slammed his laptop shut, but the damage was done. A couple kids filmed it. Word spread like wildfire. Parents went ballistic. The union usually defends everything, but even they were like, yeah, we're not touching this. He tried to say it was an accident, that he clicked the wrong tab. But the browser history told another story. He'd been visiting that site daily during school hours. He was gone by the end of the week. The school tried to sweep it under the rug, but kids aren't subtle. They nicknamed him Mr. Hub. I still don't get how you mess up that badly. Like, how do you forget you're connected to a projector? Story 26. Chef I worked with had to fire a guy after walking into the walk-in fridge and seeing him full-on going at it with a freshly cooked prime rib. Pants down mid-thrust. Dude turned around, saw the chef, and just grinned like a maniac. Said, "Man, you gotta try this." Like it was a new dish on the menu. Chef didn't say a word, just walked out, called the owner, and said, "You need to come down here." The guy was gone within the hour. We tossed the whole rack of meat, scrubbed the walk-in, and the health inspector still showed up the next day. Word got around fast. Customers started joking about special sauce on their steak. We had to redo the menu just to get people to stop asking about it. That guy's name still gets brought up when someone messes up. At least he didn't hump the roast, we say. Low bar, but here we are. Story 27. Not HR, but was there when this happened. Trainee sales rep was riding from the airport to training with a bunch of other new hires. Female national sales manager was in the van with them, chatting, being friendly. This guy out of nowhere calls her a damn ignorant idiot. Whole van went dead silent. She blinked, asked, "Excuse me?" He doubled down. "You heard me." Our CEO, who happened to be in the same van, didn't say a word. Just pulled out his phone, made a call, and by the time they reached the training center, the guy had a taxi waiting to take him back to the airport. Fired before even stepping into the building. At the wrap-up meeting, the sales manager brought it up and said, "Can you believe he called me that?" I looked her dead in the eye and said, "Anyone who knows you knows you're not ignorant." She laughed. Everyone else just nodded. HR didn't even have to get involved. Sometimes the universe handles things for you. Story 28. Used to work at a dive bar. We hired this homeless guy, super chill, always positive, just wanted to work and stay clean. One night he walks in on one of the bartenders cooking substances on a hot plate in the kitchen. Doesn't make a scene, just comes to the manager and says, "Hey, I don't feel comfortable working with that person anymore." Guess what the manager does? Fires the homeless guy. Said he was starting drama. The bartender kept their job and kept cooking substances, for a while anyway. A month or so later, we had a full-blown raid. Place got shut down for a few weeks. That bartender? Arrested on the spot. The homeless guy? Last I saw, he was working at a gas station down the road, still clean. We all felt horrible. Dude just wanted to work, and management threw him out for trying to do the right thing. Sometimes good people get screwed, while the trash gets to simmer a little longer. Story 29. Had to fire a female general manager because she was offering sexual favors to food delivery drivers to get them to agree to do her store's deliveries. And I'm not talking about flirting or free meals. I mean full-on transactional. She'd promise extras if they picked up extra shifts or delivered during peak hours. One of the drivers finally came forward, said it made him super uncomfortable and he felt pressured. When we confronted her, she didn't even deny it. Said, "Well, it got the job done, didn't it?" Like that was a reasonable defense. HR nearly fell out of their chairs. She was terminated immediately. The store had to do a full retraining on professional conduct, and we had to bring in a new GM from another region. Delivery drivers stopped showing up for a while after that, like they were scared they'd be propositioned again. Whole thing was a mess. Still can't believe she thought she was being efficient. Story 30. Worked at a company where the IT team was migrating servers. Everyone was overworked and exhausted. There was one server labeled "Do Not Touch" in bold red letters. Guess what happened? One guy, sleep-deprived and cranky, walks in and unplugs it. No backup. No warning. Just yanked the plug. Another admin, who'd been working 80-hour weeks, just snapped. Grabbed a crowbar. Why it was even there, no one knows, and swung it at the guy. Hit his arm and broke it. We had to separate them and call legal. The admin didn't even apologize, just sat in the break room, drinking coffee like nothing happened. HR got involved, and after some intense back and forth, the admin walked away with a fat severance package. The guy who pulled the plug? Transferred to another team. That server? Never came back. Whole ordeal became known as the crowbar incident. We joke about it now, but back then? Tense as hell. Don't mess with exhausted sysadmins. Story 31. So there was this guy at my friend's company who got caught full-on pleasuring himself in the warehouse. Not the bathroom. Not even a closet. No, right there in the sub-bathroom area, the one with no stalls, just sinks and a mirror. Another employee walked in and caught him in the act. They locked eyes. Guy didn't even stop. Just nodded and kept going. Security was called immediately. He got walked out before lunch, pants still halfway up. Later, HR said he tried to argue it wasn't a fireable offense because he wasn't hurting anyone. Bro, you were doing that in the same area people wash their hands before lunch. Nobody was trying to see that. I heard he tried to file for unemployment and listed wrongful termination as the reason. Shocking no one, it didn't go through. He's now referred to as Handstand Harry, and his name is still used in training as what not to do. You can't make this stuff up. Story 32. Worked with a guy who got fired for harassing basically everyone. He'd message male co-workers asking if they wanted to hook up with his wife, like it was some kind of loyalty program. Sent group texts with photos, asked dudes if they were into stuff. Also had a habit of cornering women and asking about group sex. Nobody knew how bad it was until after he was gone. We all just thought he left because he wasn't vibing with the job. Then the stories came out. Apparently HR got flooded with complaints at once. Texts, screenshots, voice messages. Some of the content was so graphic that HR had to get legal involved just to sort through it. Turns out he was running swinger invites through Slack. After he got fired, we had to do a full-blown culture and consent training. Everyone was on edge for weeks. Wild part? He acted totally normal at work. Quiet, polite, even brought donuts once. Guess that was his peace offering before he asked you to bang his wife. Story 33. This guy I knew joined the police after leaving the Navy. Smart, fit, total overachiever. Crushed all his training, top of the class. Pass-out parade day comes, and they go out to celebrate. Everyone's in good spirits. A few hours later, he's hammered, like Navy-level drunk, and decides it'd be hilarious to drop his pants and crap out the top-floor window of the barracks. He forgot he wasn't in the Navy anymore, where that kind of thing is just boys being boys. His new police colleagues weren't amused. They reported him, and he was discharged the next morning. Just like that, bye-bye police dream. But here's the kicker. He walks straight back into the Armed Forces recruitment office and tells the recruiter what happened. The recruiter laughs and says, "Well, you're back now." He rejoined the military and eventually became an officer. Dude crapped his way out of one career and into another. Some people just bounce back like that. Story 34. Once had to fire a woman for sexual harassment. And not the subtle kind. She'd asked the Muslim guys on her team to go buy her period products during work hours. When they said no, because obviously she would shame them in team emails and say they were the reason she had to go home. She also organized birthday gifts where she'd collect money and then buy sex toys for people to unwrap in front of everyone. If someone refused to chip in, she'd call them out publicly. People started calling in sick on their birthdays just to avoid the spectacle. Oh, and she circulated a naked mirror selfie of herself on an exercise bike. When we investigated, she admitted it all. Claimed it was body positivity. Nah, that's just HR poison. She was also sleeping with a co-worker, which wasn't the issue, until she started giving him favorable shift assignments. She was gone fast. But the stuff she pulled still comes up in onboarding horror stories. Every company has one person that makes you rewrite the handbook. She was ours. Story 35. Worked with a guy who got fired for showing naked pics of his ex to people on the warehouse floor. Not tasteful ones either. Full-on explicit, degrading stuff. Claimed she deserved it for cheating on him. Even worse, some of the pics involved weird stuff. Like really weird. He thought he was being funny, showing them around like they were baseball cards. One of the supervisors got wind of it and hauled him in. He didn't deny it. Just said, "She's not allowed to see her kid anyway, so what's the big deal?" Apparently there was a custody battle going on, and he wasn't even allowed to see their oldest either. After he got fired, he tried to play the great dad role on social media, posting selfies with his other kid, writing captions like "family first." Meanwhile, half the staff had seen him showing ass pics next to the loading dock. The hypocrisy was unreal. He's now blocked by half the company on Facebook. Story 36. This guy shows up to our factory first day wearing a full-on custom suit, tattoos everywhere, dyed dreads, gold grill. Looked less like a new hire and more like an off-brand rapper. People were confused but figured he'd just be doing inventory or something low-key. Next day, he storms into the supervisor's office screaming because he didn't get paid. We explained during orientation that pay is bi-weekly, but he wasn't having it. Starts shouting, threatening people, pacing like a caged animal. Then he gets violent, throws a chair, punches the wall. Security had to drag him out kicking and screaming. Rumor is he used to do other work before deciding to go legit. Didn't last 48 hours. Company told us not to talk about it. Too late, everyone saw the footage. Now when new hires act sketchy, we say, "Hope he's not a day too dread." Story 37. I was locking up the venue when I noticed the restaurant across the street still had lights on. Odd, because they always leave early. Next morning, senior management is there, and everyone looks pissed. Turns out the new assistant manager decided to have a little after-hours party with 2 waitresses in the manager's office. On camera, they were smoking and having a full-on group sex session like it was a club, not a workplace. And guess what? His girlfriend was a senior manager at head office. She found out the same day. He got fired immediately. The 2 girls weren't as lucky. They got transferred to different stores, but not until they claimed he pressured them into it. Whole thing was messy. Management tried to keep it quiet, but once the footage made the rounds, it was game over. That office still smells like smoke and shame. Every new hire gets warned. If you're going to be stupid, at least look for the camera first. Story 38. This guy didn't even last until lunch on his first day. Our department had a list of everyone's contact info posted up. Bad idea in hindsight. New guy walks in, saves all the female co-workers' numbers, and immediately starts texting them creepy stuff. Like best massage you'll ever have, and bet you'd look good in nothing. One of the girls he texted was close with me and my desk neighbor. She shows us the texts, visibly shaken. My buddy, protective as hell, grabs her phone and calls the number. We hear the buzz coming from 2 desks away. New guy doesn't even flinch. Just sits there, ears red as hell. He was escorted out before the clock hit noon. HR didn't even need a meeting. His badge shut off instantly. We now keep the contact list offline. Lesson learned. We call him Lunch Break Larry, now, because that's how long he lasted. Story 39. Guy at work, real popular, well-liked, got caught smoking meat in the bathroom. Not a euphemism. He literally brought in a mini smoker, plugged it in by the urinal, and started cooking. Made the whole place smell like brisket. Everyone was confused but slightly hungry. But then, while laughing with a buddy at the urinal, he smacked the guy's junk. Like full-on bear meat slap. Buddy screamed, someone else walked in, and there he is, meat in one hand, meat in the other. Security had to drag him out by his feet. He was laughing the whole time, like it was the funniest thing he'd ever done. HR didn't even write a report. Just said he's done. Now we joke that if you hear sizzling in the bathroom, don't go in. You never know what's cooking. Story 40. I was representing a company when I got a call from a lawyer. His client, an ex-employee, was threatening to sue us for unpaid wages. I called our internal contact and asked what the deal was. Turns out the guy had been high, crashed a company vehicle into the side of a building, then ditched it and walked away like nothing happened. When we contacted him about it, he said, "Y'all can't prove it was me." Except we had GPS, security footage, and the truck had his lunch still in it. We told him to leave before we called the cops. When I called the other lawyer back, he was like, Okay, yeah, my client might have mentioned something about the truck and meth. I said, cool, so you know we're not paying him anything. He just goes, yeah, I figured. Never heard from them again. Story 41. We had a guy who went out to his truck during lunch. Stood by the open door, took his junk out, got it hard, snapped a pic of it, then came back inside and showed it to a female co-worker under the table. She was in her mid-40s, tough as nails, and didn't take crap from anyone. She went straight to HR while he was still at his desk. They fired him over the phone an hour later. But the kicker? He called her that night and left a voicemail screaming about how she ruined his life. Like, dude, you took a D*CK pic outside and then showed it to someone at work. What did you think was going to happen? Same week, we had a girl who showed off her OnlyFans photo, tied up in a Santa outfit, to try and get new subs. Then she got mad when the guys at work started commenting on her boobs. Like, what did you expect? That blew up too. Oh, and don't forget the random guy who came out of the bathroom doing the helicopter. Fired on the spot. Tried to fight someone while his pants were still around his ankles. Story 42. There was this woman who worked for us, mid-20s, always a little off, but nobody thought much of it. Then one day, she tells the whole office she's pregnant. Everyone congratulates her, brings in snacks, all that. A few weeks go by, and she's still not showing. Then she starts wearing baggy sweaters and showing people her belly anyway. Like lifting up her shirt at her desk. Thing is, she wasn't pregnant. It was all made up. People started catching on, especially when she said she gave birth, but came back to work wearing tight booty shorts the same week. Someone finally asked for a doctor's note. She faked one. HR wasn't impressed. They asked for another one, and this time, it had nothing to do with a baby, just said she had fatigue. That was the last straw. She was fired for faking a pregnancy and lying to management. We found out later she'd also claimed to be dating a local football player and had once told a co-worker she was related to a royal family. Honestly, the fake baby wasn't even the weirdest lie. We still talk about her like she was a fever dream. Story 43. I was the Solaris Unix guy back in the day, and HR had me look into another employee's computer. This guy was hired to help filter adult content out of our search engine. Instead, he hard-coded his own adult site into the search results. And guess who starred in the videos? His wife. Literally pages of her. I had to go through his system with a VP of HR and 3 lawyers breathing down my neck. We opened his desktop. Boom, folders full of videos. I also found a plain text file with all his banking info. I almost copied it, but with everyone watching, figured it wasn't the time to get curious. They fired him immediately. We had to go back through his code and scrub every trace of the site. I still get secondhand embarrassment thinking about how proud he must have been to push his own wife's content out to millions of users. Like, hey, I'm helping the algorithm, and also my OnlyFans revenue. It was the 90s, man. Wild times. That guy probably thought he was a pioneer. HR called him a liability. Same thing, I guess. Story 44. We actually had a guy fired for pulling the blowtorch on the door prank. You know the one. Heat the doorknob from the other side, wait for someone to touch it and burn their hand. Real Home Alone energy. Except this was a real workplace, and he wasn't 10 years old. He got the knob red hot, then called a coworker into the room. Guy grabs the handle and immediately screams. Burned his hand so bad he had to go to urgent care. When we asked what the hell he was thinking, the guy just said, "It was supposed to be a joke." Yeah, not so funny when you're filling out an incident report and explaining why one of your staff has second-degree burns. HR didn't even blink. Fired him the same day. The injured coworker took some time off, came back with a bandaged hand and a new nickname, Hot Palm. The prank guy? No one's heard from him since. But now every training includes a slide that says, no heat-based pranks. Can't believe that needed to be in writing, but here we are. Story 45. Had an employee get fired after leaving a DVD folder, one of those giant 250-count ones, full of adult film in a company vehicle. And I don't mean he left a couple DVDs. I mean he filled that thing top to bottom, each one labeled with titles he made himself using company label makers and burned on company time. A female coworker found it when she was cleaning out the van and immediately reported it. I recognized his handwriting on the discs, but had to go through HR protocol. When they asked me to list the titles, I started reading them out loud. Got through maybe 3 before they begged me to stop. But I kept going. They needed to understand the scope. Guy was fired for misuse of company property, which feels like the understatement of the century. He and I are still friends, weirdly enough. He jokes that he left behind a legacy. I tell him his legacy smelled like dashboard plastic and shame. We still refer to that van as the Sin Wagon. No one wants to drive it anymore. Story 46. Funeral director got fired for wearing a shirt that said "crap happens" while cleaning up after a service. Family had just lost someone unexpectedly. Emotions were high, people were crying. And here he is in a novelty tee like it's casual Friday at a barbecue. They complained immediately. Management pulled footage, confirmed it, and fired him the same day. He tried to argue it was just laundry day. No one bought it. The shirt had a cartoon toilet on it. Not exactly subtle. We had to send an apology letter to the family. The worst part? This wasn't even his first offense. He once played loud music during a wake because silence makes me anxious. Should have been gone ages ago. But the shirt? That was the final straw. Now we have a strict dress code, and every time someone new starts, we tell them the story of Mr. Crap Happens. If you can't keep it respectful at a funeral, you probably shouldn't be working in one. Story 47. Worked in a hospital where we had cashiers in the parking garage. 3 shifts, 24 hours. The overnight guy barely brought in enough revenue to justify his paycheck, but we kept him for security. One night, security patrol finds him not just asleep. Dude's fully curled up with a pillow and blanket, lights off, snoring. They took pictures, woke him up, and reported it. He was put on leave pending investigation. Union stepped in. They always step in. The appeal made it all the way up to me, and I had to sit through a hearing where the rep tried to argue that the guy was just resting his eyes. I showed the photos. They didn't even try to object. I upheld the termination. He stayed fired. Elevators in the garage all had signs saying they were monitored for safety, but that didn't stop staff from talking about who they were hooking up with in them. Honestly, the sleeping cashier was the least of our hospital drama. But he's the only one who got caught on camera with a damn pillow. Story 48. HR manager I knew told me this one. A young woman from another country got hired. Super attractive, full party mode, new to the US. Within a month, she was hooking up with a very married co-worker. Then another. All married. She had a type. The first guy found out about the others and confronted her. She ran to HR claiming he was stalking her and making unwanted advances. Swore they'd never been involved. Problem is, he had texts, emails, and even company emails with explicit photos and dirty messages. When HR showed her the receipts, she went pale. Like ghost white. She stopped showing up a few days later. He got fired shortly after for misuse of company email. The whole thing exploded. People started checking their inboxes in a panic. We had a meeting about appropriate communication, and everyone sat there sweating. Moral of the story, don't use your work email to sext. Especially not with 3 dudes in the same building. Story 49. Worked at a car manufacturing warehouse where we had a crew that test drove vehicles. One night, someone brings in a 2-liter Mountain Dew bottle filled with booze. For hours later, they're all in the back lot, wasted, playing bumper cars with the test vehicles. Literally crashing into each other, honking, laughing their asses off like it was a carnival ride. Security caught the whole thing on camera. One guy was standing on the hood of a car yelling, "I'm king of the lot." Another was trying to drift in a minivan. They were all fired before the sun came up. Management didn't even bother with hearing meetings. Just packed their stuff and changed the locks. The funniest part? They had a code they'd announce over the loudspeaker before doing it. Like Operation Lime Lightning or some crap. It took us weeks to realize those were their signal phrases. Now, every time someone hears a weird code over the intercom, they just say, "Hide the keys." Warehouse life is wild. Story 50. We hired a woman as a service writer at a heavy equipment repair place. First red flag. She called in sick her first day. Then nothing. No calls, no emails. Just ghosted us. 3 weeks later, she walks in like nothing happened. Says, "Hey guys," and grabs a coffee. We were all stunned. Manager pulled her into the office, asked where she'd been. She said she had been recharging her spirit. He said she was terminated 2 weeks ago. She said that wasn't fair since she never agreed to that. Then she tried to file a wrongful termination claim. HR laughed. She said she had a spiritual right to her employment. Even tried to get an employment lawyer, but the lawyer dropped her after reading the emails. I still don't know what she thought was going to happen. You can't just vanish for 3 weeks and expect your job to be waiting like a dog at the door. She now sells crystals on Instagram and posts memes about corporate slavery.